The fatal shootings of 2 immigrants by Trump's immigration enforcement agents are sending shockwaves across the country. This week, more than 100 religious leaders staged a protest outside the Delaney Hall Detention Center in Newark, New Jersey, demanding the closure of the privately run facility due to alleged inhumane conditions. Our next guest, Marianne Budde, the Episcopal Bishop of Washington, D.C., knows a few things about standing up for what she sees as morally right, even taking the message directly to Donald Trump. Here's Bishop Budde last year confronting the president during the national prayer service following Trump's inauguration.
The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away.
Trump was enraged by the bishop's remarks and demanded an apology from her and her church. Joining us now is Bishop Marianne Budde, who is also the author of a new children's book. It's called I Can Learn to Be Brave, and we will talk about that in a moment. Bishop Budde, thank you for joining us this morning. I want to ask you, because in those remarks that we just played, that was at the beginning of the president's second term. We have now seen this deportation campaign in full force. He has stripped lawful status from hundreds of thousands of immigrants, deported dreamers who were brought here when they were children. The DHS secretary said just this week that they were going to bring the heat to the streets.
Right.
So what is your response to what we're seeing right now when it comes to the deportation of immigrants across the country?
It's the realization of our worst nightmares. Everything that the administration promised that they would do, they are doing. And it's humbling to see when the levers of power are concentrated in the hands of people with such a fierce ideology, and the means of resistance is such that we have to literally take to the streets, as you saw in the summary that you mentioned in New Jersey, or that we saw in Minnesota, that the response needs to be on the ground locally, where people have the ability to protect as many people as they can during what has been just the most horrific treatment of human beings that we have witnessed in a very long time.
Bishop, religious leaders have been kind of at the forefront of different movements for decades, for maybe as long as our country has been around, right?
We've been on all sides.
Yes.
That's true.
Sometimes on the rough side, yes. Sometimes on the bad side.
Represented across the spectrum,
yes.
But I am proud.
The good ones are usually on the good side of things.
I'm proud of the times when we stand on the side of right.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, my grandfather was a Baptist preacher in South Carolina, and so was doing the same thing during the Civil Rights Movement on the good side, to be very clear. So I'm curious what you think as we look around what's going on,
right.
And you as someone who isn't scared to use the Bible and the teachings as what people should be doing. When you watch the President of the United States, the administration, twist and use religion to kind of what a lot of people would say their ill ends. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? How do you as someone, a woman of the cloth, think about that?
Well, I wish I could say it was original, but it is something that has been true across the ages, that religious texts can be used for good or for ill. They can be instruments of blunt political force, and we've seen that throughout our history. Yeah. So it's an old playbook. There is a virulence to it that is sobering to be in the presence of in real time. Yeah. It's one thing to read about it in history. It's another thing to witness it with such political force behind it. And it's sobering to see how many Christians, in particular, are swept up in the movement that is supporting the president and his goals.
Bishop Buddy, can I? I'm
Yes,
sorry, Laura, let me have
Yeah.
the book, because this is going to be a twofold question, because
Yeah.
the name of your children's book is I Can Learn to Be Brave. And in listening to the conversation around the table, I'm just wondering, from your clerical colleagues, maybe you guys are on text chains with each other.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, how fearful, I mean, what we just showed, you talking to the President of the United States and his arrayed family and administration officials, how fearful are your colleagues about standing up to power?
There's a broad spectrum among religious leaders. Those who feel that the gospel requires us to speak in, and not just speak, Jonathan, but to act. You know, words are words, but to really place our values into religious practice across our institutions. I feel that there's not so much, there's some fear, but there's also an acknowledgement that in our pews, people across the spectrum are sitting and listening. And so one of the things we struggle with is how to present the gospel in such a way that it can reach as many people as possible, and that we don't demonize people who disagree with us, that we allow for healthy debate and constructive conversation, but that we create an environment in our congregations and in our communities where we can talk about things that have become so dangerous in public speech that you are afraid to say anything.
Sorry.
No, I think that's part of our call, is to create space where I can speak what I believe to be true, but you can also tell me what you think, and we can work it out together. And I feel like one of the things that religious leaders must do now is to dedicate ourselves to the common good. Please.
So, Bishop, you clearly have said that people of the faith should be involved and have the ability to speak about politics and to stand up for what you believe is right. I want to get your thoughts about the fact that this administration has been injecting Christianity more and more into the way they run the government. The fact that J.D. Vance, the highest level Catholic in the U.S. government, is saying that Christianity is core to the Western civilization in terms of how it should be run, and that the administration is essentially arguing for no separation of church and state. As someone who, leads in your faith, what do you make of this government trying to break down the separation of church and state?
Well, first of all, they're only wanting a unified church and state with the church that agrees with them, right, and supports their policies, which is a very different definition of church than I have. So I would challenge the definition of church in that way, because it's a very narrow expression that is aligned with the consolidation of political power. The best Christian witness is one that works toward the common good. In a democracy, we are committed to the good of all people. We don't enter into the public arena to advance an agenda that is Christian, but that we advance an agenda that is for the good of all people. And I feel like that is when we are truest to our own values, when we are working in concert with people of all faith and of no faith for the common good.
Bishop Marianne Buddy, author of I Can Learn to Be Brave.
Third of a trilogy.
Third of a trilogy,
They're all here.
Adult and
all
teen.
about bravery and agency.
We can be brave.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Such a
much.
pleasure
Thank
being with
you very much.
Thank you.